Local frost may develop as temperatures continue to drop close to or below freezing. A dry end to the day across southern Scotland with some bright spells, clearer skies this evening, and a frost may develop for some, particularly over higher ground. In Northern Ireland, after a fine day, temperatures will drop for a time this evening, allowing again a local frost to form for some. Cloud cover increases from the west later on. A band of cloud and rain moves eastwards overnight, bringing rain to many western parts by the morning, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Neil Oliver. You can join me live every Saturday evening for opinions and discussions about the week's top stories. There's also a smattering of history and archaeology and features that define our great British Isles. You'll hear my thoughts unfiltered, as well as those of my guests, and we don't always agree. And we want to hear from you too. Neil Oliver Live, Saturdays from 7 on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome, I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster Danny Kelly and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opit. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. Yes, this is your news at 4 o'clock. Officials have announced a further 86 cases of the Omicron variant, taking the UK total now to 246. It comes after the travel industry reacted with fury to rule changes, meaning all passengers arriving into the UK will need to take a COVID pre-departure test from Tuesday. The decision was made after data showed an increase in the number of Omicron cases linked to foreign travel. Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab says the travel measures are key to helping keep the Omicron variant at bay.
I know that that's a burden for the travel industry, but we've made huge strides in this country. We've got 80% of those over 12 double jab now. We've got a third of the country with a third jab or a booster. We've got to take the measures targeted forensically to stop the new variant seeding in this country to create a bigger problem.
The first at-home COVID-19 treatment could be offered by patients by Christmas in an attempt to protect the vulnerable from the Omicron variant. Health Secretary Sajid Javid is set to launch a national pilot of the antiviral pill called Lag-Ev-Rio after the UK became the first country in the world to licence its use. The NHS would be expected to deliver courses of the tablets within as little as 48 hours of a positive coronavirus result. Professor Lawrence Young, Vice President of the Medical School of the University of Warwick, says this speed of delivery is the biggest concern.
This is the issue, is about how do you organise this? And so the idea here is people with that report symptoms that are on the more vulnerable side of things and have comorbidities will be provided with the drug very quickly. And that's got to happen. And that's the bit that I think I'm a little bit concerned about, the logistics, getting that drug to people within that time frame.
The Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng has said it's totally unacceptable that thousands of homes are still without power 9 days after Storm Arwen hit the UK. Just over 4,000 properties across northern England and Scotland still have no supply, despite nearly 300 military personnel being drafted in to assist. Yellow weather warnings have been issued in the area ahead of Storm Barra, which is expected to arrive on Tuesday. More than 50 houses have been evacuated in Derby after a number of suspicious items were found. Officers attended a house on King Alfred Street in Normanton earlier this morning around 11:30. The explosive ordnance disposal team are on site and police have asked residents to stay away. A man has been arrested and remains in custody. People have paid their respects to Arthur Labinjo Hughes in Solihull today. Crowds including the six-year-old's grandmother released balloons at the vigil. Earlier, the government announced a national review into the circumstances leading to his death. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was jailed for life after being found guilty of his murder, while his father, Thomas Hughes, received 21 years for manslaughter. The Attorney General's office says the length of the sentences is to be reviewed. The Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, has said it would have been a breach of COVID restrictions if a party was held in number 10 Downing Street in the run-up to Christmas. It comes after the Metropolitan Police said they were considering complaints made by Labour backbenchers about the alleged gatherings. Boris Johnson hasn't denied the events took place, but says no rules were broken. Illegal drug users could have their passports taken away as part of the Prime Minister's new 10-year plan to tackle drug-related crime. Expected to be announced this week, the plans include removing offenders' driving licences and football-style travel bans. Tougher measures will also be put in place to break up county line gangs. Meanwhile, 50 local authorities with the worst drug issues, including Middlesbrough, Blackpool and Liverpool, will receive increased funding. At least 14 people have died and 56 are injured after Mount Semeru erupted yesterday in Indonesia. At least 1,300 people have been evacuated after several villages were blanketed with falling ash, mud and debris. Indonesia's weather agency says the expected rain could complicate evacuations even more. The country's National Disaster Agency says rescuers are still searching for those reported missing. Well, that's it from me for now. I'll be back in around half an hour with the latest headlines. Now, let's return to Nana Akua.
Now, I don't know about you, but I'm fed up of virtue signalling celebrities jumping onto the bandwagon of concern. Now, I think that Sir Lewis Hamilton is an absolute hero when it comes to motorsport and being a man of colour. That phrase hasn't been cancelled yet, I'm just checking. I can still say that. Things change from day to day. But what I cannot contend with is when these people jump on a bandwagon of concern whilst even unknowingly being a total hypocrite. Let's start with some old school stuff. Black Lives Matter. When a load of people decided to show their affinity with this far-left extreme Marxist pressure group who wanted to defund the police, they took the knee to show their support. I mean, even the name is wrong and divisive. My guide for determining that, if you can't say White Lives Matter without it coming off as racist, then the same is true for the phrase Black Lives Matter. A load of well-meaning celebrities decided to turn their Twitter image to a black square, and the knee found its way into sport, and in particular, football. Players got down on a bended knee, bananas were thrown at them on the pitches, and people booed. The authorities, the people who could really make a difference, stayed silent, and nothing really happened. Take the Qatar World Cup. Qatar is known to have one of the worst human rights abuse records in the world, but I don't hear any of the players refusing to play there. You've only got to go to Amnesty International's website, where they call it Qatar's World Cup of Shame, as they point out that the stadiums are being built by exploited migrant workers from Bangladesh, Nepal and India. The website provides a detailed list of 8 ways this exploitation is taking place. Then people like Gary Lineker, who have apparently taken in a refugee, he has clearly objected to the human rights abuses, but he says he still has to go and report on it. In the meantime, over 400 people have died building the stadiums, and many refugees are being subjected to forced labour. Amnesty International's website states this about Qatar's workers. They can't change jobs, they can't leave the country, and they often wait months to get paid. Meanwhile, football's governing body, FIFA, its sponsors and construction companies involved are set to make massive financial gains from the tournament. Now, Lewis Hamilton has chucked his 2 pennies worth into the ring. Today, in Saudi Arabia, he's racing for the F1 World Championship. And to show his support of LGBTQ+ rights in a country where same-sex relationships can carry a death penalty, he's going to wear a rainbow-coloured hat. Sorry, no, a helmet. Great, that'll help. In the meantime, his Mercedes team's new sponsor is Kingspan, the industrial cladding manufacturer, which has been implicated in the Grenfell Tower fire inquiry. Now, Lewis has in the past Instagrammed his support for the Grenfell survivors. Now, whilst there is no doubt he has little control over which names Mercedes choose as sponsors, if he's going to get himself embroiled in all of this, he might want to look at the history of Petronas, his team's principal sponsor. Actions speak louder than virtue signals. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We'll talk highs and lows, the lessons learned, and what comes next on the outside. And today I'm joined by Trent Franks, a former Republican politician during the Trump administration. I'll ask him what it's like working under the former president. Foreign Affairs expert James Marlowe will be in the studio, giving me an update on stories making the headlines across the globe. And the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has COVID become big business? 2 years into the pandemic, who are the winners and losers economically? And is science profiting from the virus? Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not send me a tweet @gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. First, hello, welcome.
Nice to see you.
You've been away, Danny.
I've been in London, actually. Spent a couple of days, middle of the week in London, at the hotel called the Middle-Eight Hotel. It's a fabulous hotel somewhere in... I've forgotten where it was.
All right. Listen, I didn't mean I want to hear the whole story.
Oh, sorry, you didn't want my...
I just meant you've been away nice
to see you. It's so insincere, isn't it?
I didn't need to hear the whole story. And Lembit, welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to be back.
Have you had a haircut?
Yeah, quite a severe haircut.
I was going to say, did you ask them to cut it like that?
Yes, because I've been at a motorcycle show. And I wanted to look...
Like a helmet.
Fair enough.
That's almost wrong.
You should have worn a rainbow helmet then in your support for LGBTQ+ rights or non-rights in Qatar or wherever he's gone now. He's in...
I could have had tints, I suppose, but I didn't. Though interesting, you're tempting us to talk about that very subject. And if I can, I'll tell you what I think.
Tell me what you think. That's what we're here for.
What's so frustrating is exactly what you said in your monologue.
we get preached by famous and rich people on how to live our lives. Emma Thompson flying all the way to a climate demo in London. You can see the contradiction there.
And she was also holding a wax-laced cup, wasn't she, from one of those...
A what?
So these cups that you get from a lot of these coffee companies, they have wax on the outside.
Why?
So they're paper, but the wax keeps everything in and stops the plastic from melting, or the paper from melting. But that's not recyclable, you see. So she was holding this cup as well. She'd gone, I think, pretty much first class.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, of course you would. Of course you would, because that's the only way to come and tell us not to fly. But moving back to what you're saying... Lewis Hamilton, he's a really impressive fellow.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Top of his trade. But the danger is they slip into an environment they don't understand. Yeah. Politics isn't just something you preach about. You have to know the facts. And you often talk about the importance of having facts and having reasoned debate. What kind of message does it give us when you tell us that you care about human rights and then you just ignore it? Obviously, it's a big cost to him if he doesn't go a race because it's in the balance this year. But that's when you really know if somebody believes in something or not, when it's painful to do what they tell us is the right thing. He didn't have to say anything at all. He's made this rod for his own back.
And the fact that he's wearing a helmet with a rainbow flag on it, I mean, it's of no relevance to the Saudi authorities. The Saudi authorities, there's a name for this actually, where they pay for events. They call it sports washing instead of whitewashing. So that if they can attract Western virtue signalling companies and professional athletes like Lewis Hamilton, everyone, that sort of deflects from what's really going on behind the scenes. I would love, because you're right, Nada, it's a Pandora's box, this virtue signalling. When does it stop? Because as soon as you object to something, people will then throw it around and say you're this or you're that. He should have, in my opinion, if he feels so strongly, he should have boycotted it. And he should have said, look, I'm sorry, Mercedes, I know I'm contractually obliged, but this is more important to me than winning the Formula One world title. Now, I'll put this poxy little yellow, green, blue, pink helmet on to show my support, and I'm an ally of the Saudi Arabians LGBT plus Q community. But as soon as that, I want the 10 points. I want to fly home to Switzerland.
And you know, here's the other point that you've made. It can be done. Somebody who took the high moral tone and lived it through was Muhammad Ali.
John McEnroe as well, actually.
And John McEnroe. Muhammad Ali would have been world champion more times, but he refused, it was to do with war, and he refused to take the draft. As a result, he was stripped of his chance to fight. So there are people who've done this. It doesn't seem to be Lewis Hamilton.
No, and a lot of the others as well. I mean, there's those who are talking about this terrible people taking the knee. Of course, you've got all that going on in sport and football. Well, of course, I don't agree in racism. I think it's a disgrace. But is that all you're going to do? You're just going to bend down on a knee?
When's it going to stop?
And I actually think sometimes it sort of alleviates the guilt of the person who may have been racist in their time, or makes them feel better for the racism that's occurring because they're doing something or seen to be doing something. Whereas what you know, I was told off for saying I don't agree with taking the knee, but yet I used to lecture around schools all across the country and in Europe, motivating kids and teaching them brain training, and also talking about racism and actually educating. I went around and actually did something. So for me, it's a bit of an insult when somebody thinks you get down and bend a knee and that's it.
I would like there to be a secret ballot amongst the Premier football players to really find out how many in the dressing room are comfortable with taking the knee. And if it polarises and divides society, why is the changing room any different? Now, who is going to be the first white player to put his head above the parapet and say, do you know what, I'm not comfortable? Because the only people who have objected are black players. Now, I would really like to see a secret ballot amongst all of the Premier League footballers and to see really whether they are behind taking the knee, because I don't know when it's going to stop.
Well, the difficulty here is, let's just call it for what it is. This is what you said, it's virtue signalling. It doesn't change anything. What it does, it oppresses people's ability to have a dialogue. A man called Nick Griffin, who used to run the British National Party, was one of my constituents, and for years I tried to have a debate with him. And every time we nearly got it sorted out, then some group or other threatened violence and it was pulled. Well, wouldn't it have been a bit more persuasive if I could have been on a stage with him and he puts his case, I put mine, and you trust the audience to make a judgment? But instead we had this threatening of violence. Now, this isn't exactly the same, but people get cowed into submission. They don't want to say anything. And then on top of that, this distasteful thing where rich and famous people tell us what we should do and don't do it themselves. And that's actually kind of damaging for the entire the fabric, really, of having rational debate.
I make lots of mistakes. We all make mistakes. Try not to preach to other people about things I can't do better. But these people don't seem to have that self-denying ordinance. May I just finally, you mentioned Gary Lineker. I remember Gary Lineker the first time he took an economic refugee or an asylum seeker, who knows. And I remember there was an article where he said that his boys had left home and he's got a 5 or 6 bedroom house. So the implication there was that he was living there by himself. Now, when the economic migrant stroke asylum seeker left, it transpired that his sons had moved in with him for the period of his stay.
Really?
Yeah, now, no one else has picked up on that. I remember him saying, it's an empty home, everyone's left home. His sons are in their early 20s, they don't live with him. So my point was, what he was trying to do was say, look, I've got all of this space, and then when it came to the crunch, this is my opinion, he didn't feel confident and asked some of his family members to move back in with him. Now, that's just a hypothesis of mine.
But that doesn't make any difference. He still took in someone, which is great. But then if you're then going to do that, then you're sort of still going to this Qatar thing where, which and the stadium has clearly been built by loads of migrants who haven't been treated well. It's on the front of Amnesty International's website. If you care to look, and you can see, well, you're still going. And him and the BBC, they're all still going. All these people are still going, yet they're talking about it as though they're sort of, virtually signaling how great they are. Why are you going?
He said he has to do it. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't have to do it. If this matters so much to him, then take the hit. Because you know what? The fabric of somebody is shown when they have the courage to speak out, say the uncomfortable stuff, have the awkward conversations like I tried to have with Nick Griffin. It's not shown at all when you just do a little bit of the old chat and then hope no one notices. Go, well, I've made my statement, but I can't do any more. Of course you can. Imagine if Lewis had pulled out. Imagine if Gary Lineker had boycotted it. Now that's when the story starts to unfold.
That's when the conversation starts and something actually starts happening. Now, on the Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia, Lewis Hamilton said this: "Do I feel comfortable here? I wouldn't say I do, but it's not my choice to be here. The sport has taken a choice to be here. And whether it's right or wrong, whilst we are here, it's important we do try to raise awareness." On the subject of the Qatar World Cup, Gary Lineker has previously said, "I get this all the time, so you're not going to go. You're not going to go then. I've got to go because it's my job.
No.
News reporters go, so why am I not allowed to? You don't have to agree, and I vehemently disagree with the regime, and I'm not going there to cheer it on. I'm not a supporter. We know it was a corrupt bid. We shouldn't be there, but it is there. And I'll go and report on it from there." Right, so after the break, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. Face masks, online shopping and booster jab after booster jab. 2 years into the pandemic, are companies now profiting from the virus? Send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell us what you think. Tweet us at GBNews. There's a poll up right now asking, has COVID become big business? Cast your vote now, but first, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with clear spells for many as showers ease in the east. Let's take a look at the details. In southwest England, there will be plenty of bright spells to end the day with just the odd shower for the far west. Under clear skies this evening, temperatures will drop before rising through the night. Across London, a fairly cloudy end to the day, although showers will start to ease. Under any clear spells this evening, temperatures could temporarily drop to freezing. Over in Wales, some bright spells into the night, though temperatures will drop before rising later as cloud and rain moves in. A dry end to the day with light wind in the Midlands with clear skies this evening, and we'll see temperatures dropping, but these will pick up through the night. Moving to the northeast of England, light showers will continue across eastern coasts, although they will be easing. A local frost may develop as temperatures continue to drop close to or below freezing. A dry end to the day across southern Scotland with some bright spells, clearer skies this evening, and a frost may develop for some, particularly over higher ground. In Northern Ireland, after a fine day, temperatures will drop for a time this evening, allowing again a local frost to form for some. Cloud cover increases from the west later on. A band of cloud and rain moves eastwards overnight, bringing rain to many western parts by the morning, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon. Now, is it just me, or are you beginning to notice the winners and losers of this pandemic? The winners, I can see, big corporations in the form of furlough, big companies like Amazon, Just Eat, Deliveroo, those who appear to have links with the government to provide PPE. There's Big Pharma, so the drug companies providing repeated jabs, PCR testers, lateral flow testing. Now there's a new pill on the block, and the whole new industry of delivery has been developed around it. The UK being the first to authorise it with over 400,000 doses. Even elements of the hotel industry cashing in on charging over £2,000 for quarantine. Bit of a rip-off, really. Now, whereas before we complained that the government were too lacklustre to react, they are literally on steroids this time. I mean, I get it. They'd say that they can't win. But whilst I will go along with any plan to curb this blasted virus, I will still question. So the losers in this, well, that's pretty easy, isn't it? It's the real people of this country, that's you and me, in the form of things like the hospitality industry, small business, once the lifeblood of this country, which became the sacrificial lambs. They bore the brunt of the pandemic. Many got no help whatsoever. So, as ever, I am 100% behind any initiative to prevent transmission of COVID. I won't follow these things without question, and now I'm beginning to question. I mean, why should a hotel quarantine cost over £2,000 for 10 days? Why haven't we got a jab that actually prevents you from catching COVID so that it stops the repeated booster jab scenario? And if Omicron, this new variant, provides is weaker, then surely this could signal the pandemic coming to an end. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has COVID become big business? And I'm joined by the Chair for Primary Care and Public Health at Imperial College London, Professor Azim Najeed. So Azim, welcome. Now,
hello, Nana.
Hello, I want to ask you about this. Different jabs, we've got face masks, we've got boosters, and all of this seems to be this opportunity where Big Pharma appears to be making profit. Am I wrong on this?
You're not wrong. Clearly, COVID is a global pandemic, so it's led to
a big increase in many areas of healthcare. So as you mentioned, PPE, vaccines, face masks. So it has become a big business, and that's understandable because of the scale of the pandemic globally, with so many people infected around the world, including in the UK.
So there seems to be a lot of... And what about the whole vaccine scenario? Because I'm thinking, surely they can come up with, they've got a lot of money been given. These companies have been given quite a fair amount of money to create the vaccine in the first instance. Absolutely, totally understandable and fair enough, right? But I'm feeling this booster thing and the repetition of it all. Surely we could spend some more time actually developing a vaccine that would stop you from catching it in the first place.
Many vaccines do require multiple doses. So, for example, hepatitis B requires 3 doses. Diphtheria and whooping cough require 3 doses, followed by boosters. So it's not common for vaccines to require 3 or more doses. So I think it's quite understandable that these vaccines do require multiple doses to generate a good immune response. Each vaccine you're given increases your protection. So 1 dose gives some protection, 2 improves that protection, and 3 increases your protection again. So I think it's quite natural and normal to expect vaccines to require 3 or more doses. It's very common for other vaccines, and we're seeing the same thing now with vaccines for COVID-19.
But it's over quite a short space of time now. So my next booster, I've had my booster jab. I'm all for the vaccine. I'm glad that it's saving lives, and I believe they're life-saving. But every 6 months, there's a booster now, and can they not make the vaccine last longer then? Because some of them, for example, the meningitis jab that you have when you're young, you have that over a period of time, but then it lasts for a very long time. Why can they not investigate that?
The protection will vary from vaccine to vaccine. So, for example, the flu vaccine, that requires annual boosters because the virus mutates so much year to year. With these vaccines, they are quite new, so we don't fully understand the long-term protection they provide. But we do know that 3 doses provides very good protection. Maybe 3 doses is enough, but that will take time to understand. So in the coming months, we'll monitor people who've been vaccinated and look at their infection rates, and that will guide us as to whether we need to give further booster doses in the future. But so far, we do know that 3 doses works very well. So if you are due a booster dose, then please get that booster dose now rather than waiting for it.
So how do you think, in your eyes, COVID has changed the whole sort of healthcare industry?
It's quite clear, it's a big impact, as you mentioned, on society. So many people have fallen ill and many have died. It's affected people's education. It's affected many parts of the economy. So hospitality, travel, are all badly affected. Unfortunately, until we have vaccines, globally, with probably 3 or more doses, it's going to be a problem for some time to come. So this will be a big business, I think, for many more years to come, and it will be have a big impact on public health globally. But I would hope with 3 vaccines, we will start to slowly bring it down in the UK. Longer term, we don't know how many vaccines we'll need, but we do know that 3 vaccines work very well. So I'm quite hopeful that by the spring, we can really suppress the severity of the disease in the UK at least.
Interesting. I don't know whether I can squeeze in one more question, but I've got to go. Thank you so much for that. I did want to ask...
Thank you very much, Nana.
Very, very briefly, though, if Omicron turns out to be, doesn't turn out to be as potent in terms of its deadly effects as the previous version, so the Delta variant, is it better for it to sort of overtake this variant?
If it is a milder infection, it's better in some ways if it overtakes other viruses. But at this stage, we don't fully understand its impact in the UK. UK's got a quite little population, lots of chronic problems like diabetes and heart disease. So we don't fully understand how people with those problems will be affected by the virus. So that, again, will take some time to understand fully.
OK, thank you so much, Professor Azim Najib.
Thanks a lot, Nana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair for Primary Care and Public Health, Imperial College London. I'm also joined by independent economist Julian Jessup. Julian, do you think that COVID has become big business?
Well, I think it inevitably has, but I'm actually relatively relaxed about that. I'm relaxed about people making money out of COVID. There's a great economist, Adam Smith, who wrote once that it's not because of the benevolence of the butcher or the baker that we get our dinner, it's because of their self-interest. And I think it's the same with many people providing the essential goods and services that we needed during the pandemic. It's because of the profit motive that we have as many vaccines as we do. It's because of the profit motive that lots of online companies have stepped up and filled in where the high street shops have been able to do business as usual. And I also don't think it's quite as black and white, if I can still use that phrase, as your introduction suggested. So the fact that companies have made a lot of money from vaccines and from online shopping, that's meant also that that's protected our health. A lot of these online platforms are actually vital for small businesses as well. So lots of high street shops now have an online presence. So it's not, some massive winners and loads of losers. I think all of us can benefit from the free market economy, keeping us going, providing lots of choice, providing the goods and services that we need, and hopefully at lower prices too.
Well, there does seem to be quite a few people who did lose out. I mean, you had small businesses and you've got hospitality and all those sort of industries that seem to be losing out on this, especially if we end up in a situation where there's another lockdown, as it were, which I'm hoping will never happen again.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, though...
You're absolutely right. That's where the government does need to step in, because if markets can't work as normal, because businesses are being shut down in order to, frankly, to save people's lives, then I think there is a clear case there for the state to step in to subsidise those businesses. And of course, that's what the state has done through things like the furlough scheme, which I think is been one of the great policy successes of my lifetime. There's another area also, I think, where the government needs to be careful, though. I sort of talked up how effective markets can be. But there's an exception here when there isn't a lot of competition. And I think a lot of the contracts that the government has awarded don't seem to have been properly competitive ones. That was fair enough in the early days of the crisis, when the important thing was just to get things done as quickly as possible and maybe cut a few corners. But I think quite a few skeletons are going to come out of the cupboard, as some of them already are, over the next few months and years, of money that wasn't spent very well at all.
What about the idea that, whilst, yes, you said you were happy with these drug companies making money and all that because they're providing a service and creating a vaccine, but isn't this almost like a perpetual cycle which will carry on in this way? Because, as you said, there's very little competition in terms of the vaccine. They're all creating it. Ultimately, we could find ourselves in a place where it's actually more profitable to keep people getting the jab rather than finding a solution to actually getting rid of COVID altogether.
Well, again, that's a question of government policy, isn't it? I mean, if there is a risk, I suppose, that the governments continue to keep us in lockdown and scared of COVID because it's good for pharmaceutical companies. But I think that's an overly cynical view. I think most governments would far rather that they reopened their economies and we went back to our normal lives as soon as possible. And I think that's, again, being cynical, that politically is in the best interests of elected politicians. So I think that's where we're going to head up. In the meantime, frankly, if drugs companies or providers of PPE made a bit more money than usual by providing the goods and services that we desperately need during a pandemic, then I think fair enough.
Julian, thank you so much for joining me. That's Julian Jessup. He's a business expert. So after the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, has COVID become big business? You'll hear my panel's thoughts and we'll see what you think. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. Yes, here are your latest news headlines. Officials have announced a further 86 cases of the Omicron variant, taking the UK total to 246. It follows after the travel industry has reacted with fury to rule changes, meaning all passengers arriving in the UK will need to take a COVID pre-departure test from Tuesday. The decision was made after data showed an increase in the number of Omicron cases linked to foreign travel. The first at-home COVID-19 treatment could be offered to patients by Christmas in an attempt to protect the vulnerable from the new variant. Health Secretary Sajid Javid is set to launch a national pilot of the antiviral pill called Lagevrio after the UK became the first country in the world to licence its use. Members of the community have gathered in Solihull this afternoon in memory of Arthur Labinjo Hughes. Crowds, including his grandmother, have paid their respects outside the 6-year-old's former home by releasing balloons and leaving tributes. This follows the government's announcement of a national review into the circumstances leading to his death. Illegal drug users could have their passports taken away as part of the Prime Minister's new 10-year plan to tackle drug-related crime. Expected to be announced this week, the plans include removing offenders' driving licences and football-style travel bans. Tougher measures will also be put in place to break up county lines gangs. Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng has said it's totally unacceptable that thousands of homes are still without power 9 days after Storm Arwen hit the UK. Just over 4,000 properties across northern England and Scotland still have no supply, despite nearly 300 military personnel being drafted in to assist. Yellow weather warnings have been issued in the area ahead of Storm Barrow, which is expected to arrive on Tuesday. Well, that's it from me. I'll be back in around half an hour's time with your next news update.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
If you've just tuned in, where have you been? Welcome back. This is our Great British Debate here on GB News, and I'm asking, has COVID become big business? Vaccines cost money and give Big Pharma a chance to make a profit. There's also face masks, hand sanitizer, and more. And not only that, but lockdowns have allowed large online retailers to increase their profit when small independent retailers were forced to close. You've heard what my guests think. Now let's speak to my panel, Lembit and Danny. What do you think? I'm going to start with you, Danny.
Wow.
COVID, big business, is it?
I feel honoured. Well, yeah, it is big business. Capitalism, like any pharmaceutical company, whether you make drugs to cure cancer, there's a profit level in there for you. I'm not as cynical as you. I'm with Julian. I don't think that it's in the government's interests to keep us all hanging on every 6 months for booster jabs. I also think, if you think about it as well, Oxford AstraZeneca, they've rolled out maybe, I don't know whether to say billions, but they've rolled out millions of vaccines and they've done it for no profit. I believe, Nana, that you are a little bit cynical, and I think...
No, but I'm not.
Let me just finish just for a second,
Go on,
because
the
it's not in Oxford AstraZeneca's interests to keep rolling out vaccines for every 6 months if they can create the nirvana of a one-shot jab.
Well, you see, I have to come back to you because you said that I'm cynical. Listen, I don't think that the governments want to lock us down. No. I certainly don't think that. I think they'd rather, of course, have us out there working and earning money and paying tax into the economy. So I think that. But what I am questioning is there's coming a point where I'm thinking, well, there'll be a rolling thing where you have a booster and then another one, and we keep going with this. And I'm thinking, it's like when your mobile phone sort of decides to sort of die, you then think, I'm going to get another one. My mobile phone used to have a life of at least 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Now, suddenly, about a year and a half, it's starting to go funny, the battery's starting to go, things... it just feels to me
Why would they do that, do you think?
Because so you get another one for £800.
But why would the government want you to do that, though?
Well, I don't, but there's lots of industries that are around that appear to have, that are benefiting from it. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing for industry to make money on something because that's the name of the game. But there comes a point where I do need to question it.
Two parts to it. Practical experience today. I mentioned I was up at the NEC for Motorbike Show, Motorcycle Action Group. Me and lots of other people from the Motorcycle Action Group all had to prove we had A vaccine. So there's one part of this which is essentially creating compulsion. That's what this is. This says COVID-19 status check. So there's no doubt that there's an ongoing roaring trade which I can't see stopping anytime soon. Then there's the second side. You may not know this, but I used to work for Procter & Gamble. They're a pharmaceutical company, amongst other things. And what I learned was that most drugs don't work. You can spend an entire career as a pharmacologist and never see your work go to market. So these companies have to make all their money back on the successful drugs. And so I'm sympathetic, even with relatively large profits, for the successful drugs.
Well, me too, yes.
You did sound a little bit suspicious about the motivations here. Yes, in theory, we could live in a world where these pharmaceutical companies deliberately keep us all hanging on. But that's not the people that I worked with. They can get COVID. They don't want Grant to die. So in the real world, something that makes our whole society work is the fact that decent people, on the whole, do the best job they can, including in pharma. So I don't have a problem with this.
No, but see, I don't have a problem with it. What I'm doing is I'm questioning it. Because if you go along with this unquestioningly, then there is a mindset that it could become something that, we'll just keep going, instead of actually seeing if there's one way of sort of nipping this in the bud and stopping it.
I'll just say one sentence on that. That's a political problem. It's not an economic one. My worry is that we're heading into a kind of authoritarian police state where we don't have control over our bodies and what we pump into our bodies anymore. That's a different matter, and that's not farmers' fault. That is because politicians are thinking, we've got the power to do this. Like you mentioned, I think, when I was here last weekend, the rules now are extended till March. Does that mean we're going to have a lockdown just after January, just because the politicians can now get away with that?
I also think, actually, there's a slight contradiction. I think your position is slightly flawed. In the sense that
you're really going for it today, Dan.
No, she knows how much I think of her. But I agree.
Tell me again.
99%. No, she knows I love her. 99% of the time, I agree with you. But is it correct that once you actually develop a drug, you have a 10-year license on it, so that nobody else, even though they can copy the ingredients? So that's my point.
It's not quite that simple, but essentially.
But generally speaking, if you create a wonder drug for something, you can have a 10-year license.
Oh, it's more complex, but essentially you get a certain length of time to get your money back. But the international situation messes that up.
So surely the big farmers will be desperately trying to be the first for the one-shot wonder. Because then they have a certain amount of years and then they can sell the ingredients. I know I'm simplifying things here.
Well, I don't know, because what about, I mean, this is what I think, but I'm not 100% sure about this, that I thought that sometimes GPs giving you a prescription, a repeat prescription, was actually something that they would get some sort of profit from, because
they get bonuses.
So they get bonuses for repeat prescriptions.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not wrong with that, right? So to me, then whilst you are honest and we are all honest, and it's not to suggest that anybody's dishonest, but the incentive seems to be the wrong way round. And if that's the right way round, the incentive is that it is open to this kind of a level of...
It's just not the world that I lived in.
But this is what my thoughts are, though. And if you look at the GP...
Doctor surgeries do get
have an incentive.
Okay, but it's just not the world that I live in. Real people work in Procter & Gamble and GlaxoSmithKline and all these other ones, and those real people want to do the best they can. No one is sitting in a room, I'm sure of this, no one's sitting in a room anywhere in the big pharmaceutical companies saying, let's almost fix the problem because we can make a fortune out of this. They're saying, let's fix the problem because it's their families, their kids, their parents who are also, and they themselves also in danger. So I don't buy the fact that we've got this economic motivation to string us along. My problem is political, not commercial.
Interesting. Well, let's see what you guys are saying. Let's have a look, because today I'm asking, has COVID become big business? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Ben says, absolutely. The money these medical companies are raking in for these obligatory PCR tests is absolutely astonishing. Exactly. See, that's all part of the picture. Martin says it's become big business for pharma and governments in an orchestrated money and power grab. Dan says, yes, as always, it's a very select minority profiteering from a constantly suffering majority. Well, you see, so a lot of people are seeing what I see in parts of this. There's also a poll up onto Twitter today asking you throughout the show that very question. Has COVID become big business? And currently, 95% of you say yes, it has. Well, after the break, I'll be speaking to foreign affairs expert and friend of the show, James Marlowe, as we look on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines across the globe. Do not go anywhere. But on the agenda, why this man has become so unpopular? Well, find out. But first, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with clear spells for many as showers ease in the east. Let's take a look at the details. In southwest England, there will be plenty of bright spells to end the day with just the odd shower for the far west. Under clear skies this evening, temperatures will drop before rising through the night. Across London, a fairly cloudy end to the day, although showers will start to ease. Under any clear spells this evening, temperatures could temporarily drop to freezing. Over in Wales, some bright spells into the night, though temperatures will drop before rising later as cloud and rain moves in. A dry end to the day with light wind in the Midlands with clear skies this evening, and we'll see temperatures dropping, but these will pick up through the night. Moving to the northeast of England, light showers will continue across eastern coasts, although they will be easing. A local frost may develop as temperatures continue to drop close to or below freezing. A dry end to the day across southern Scotland with some bright spells, clearer skies this evening, and a frost may develop for some, particularly over higher ground. In Northern Ireland, after a fine day, temperatures will drop for a time this evening, allowing again a local frost to form for some. Cloud cover increases from the west later on. A band of cloud and rain moves eastwards overnight, bringing rain to many western parts by the morning, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing at 9 a.m. The stories, opinions, debate and analysis that you need to hear.
You're quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Don't forget The Briefing, 9 a.m. Monday to Friday here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So let's continue with our great British debate this hour. I'm asking you whether you think COVID has become big business. Lembit, Danny, we've spoken a bit about big pharma, but what about the wider issues? Because this is where I was going with it. Masks, PCR tests, all the other things, quarantine, £2,000, 10 days in a grimy hotel in the UK. Come on.
Do you just want to keep coming back? Do you want to keep coming back to this until we agree with you? Okay, you're right, Nana. You're right.
This is the bit where you know that you have to agree.
You're right. Right. We've got hundreds of these in our bags and our pockets, these masks and everywhere. So that I agree has gone to ridiculous.
Can you remove it off the table?
Brand new. It's brand new. Secondly, my real big complaint, big gripe is the PCR tests and the tests because. As Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State for Transport himself said, this can kill the transport sector because now it's going to cost you often like 100 quid or something to go out of the country and 100 quid to come back, even if you're only away for a long weekend. Now, that's where I think the rip-off is happening. The government promised to bring this under control. I don't see much evidence of them bringing that under control. So if you really want me to agree with you, yes, Nana, you're 100% right on that one. Happy now?
No, but what do you think, Dan?
And also,
I think I am right anyway.
to be fair to the government, this is a new strain and they're not sure about its capabilities and its mortality rate. So I think you need to sort of caveat that statement a little bit. You're highly critical of the government.
I've had 2 jabs. I've had COVID.
We're talking about the new strain, though. We're talking about the new strain.
I've had the booster. When does it end? This is where I really do agree with Nana. Why would I or you have to have test after test after test? Well, we were told if you go through this unpleasantness, then actually you'll be able to travel again. And we I fooled you.
Well, I go back to my earlier point. This is a brand new strain and it's unknown. Now, I'm going to once again have a go at my favourite TV presenter. £200 a night. If you break it down for 10 days and you get 3 square
it's actually
meals...
I think it's £2.5 grand.
2,300 quid. So, and you get 3 square meals. Now, who was that famous
Have you
fella?
seen the picture?
I know, yeah. Who was it? There's a famous guy who's had to endure 10 days of a travel lodge.
I can't remember.
Alan Partridge.
No, is it Richard E. Grant or...?
Yes, Richard E. Grant.
Yeah, and he's doing what? So 95% of the population have to stay at travel lodges when they come to London, and they don't moan about it. And he's looking suicidal. And there's a tin pot of sausages and tomatoes, and there's a tuna sandwich.
Travel lodge, you know.
Well, exactly. I think that's good value.
When I used to do the sort of tours around the country, lecturing to school kids in different schools, they give you a little breakfasty thing that's in a box and.
We have digressed a bit, haven't we?
It's horrible. That is not. I mean, that's you know. But some people like it.
But £2.5 grand is a lot. I would agree with you on that. But it's the tests that really bug me.
Well, you see, that's what I mean. Big business. Big business.
Okay, well, you got a partial victory there. Let's call it a score draw.
Well, okay, fine. I win. All right, it's time. Well, this is the part of the show where we look at what's happening elsewhere in the world and how it affects us here in the UK. On the agenda, it's Joe Biden losing his popularity. I think he probably is. I'm joined by Foreign Affairs expert James Marlowe. James, welcome.
Nana, good afternoon to you. 13 months ago, Joe Biden came to power on a ticket of bringing America back together and putting the United States on the world stage once again. But several months later, especially when he took power January the 20th, 2021, which is 11 months ago, just over, his popularity is plummeting. And that's not just with all Americans, that's with the regular Democrat voters. So on some shots, Joe Biden is looking quite frail, as we've seen on many, many times. On other shots...
every shot he looks frail.
And other shots as well, he's actually looking with his eyes closed, as if he's asleep.
Do you mean like at COP26 when he actually was asleep?
He is the oldest United States president ever to get into the White House. He's currently 79 years old. So let's look at the reasons why his popularity is plummeting. Number one, inflation. Now, when Joe Biden came to power a couple of months later, he pledged that it was temporary and that inflation would suddenly get control of itself. In other words, the American economy would bounce back and there'd be jobs for everyone. The problem is that hasn't happened. One of the reasons is that Joe Biden came to power on a ticket of stopping the fracking, moving away from fossil fuels, and also reliance less on American oil. And as a result, that pushed gas prices up. So what about OPEC? What about their production? They decided to cut back production simply because they wanted to inflate the price. In some cases, Americans who were paying $1.50 just a year ago, in some cases are paying $6 and $7 a gallon, which is enormous.
There's that old chestnut of restricting the supply so you can charge more because it appears to be a scarce resource when it isn't really, and then you can bump up the price.
Now, the Saudis have agreed right now is that they will
produce more oil and therefore perhaps lower the price, but they're using it as a bargaining chip with regard to the American talks with Iran. But let me come on to that in just a moment. The second point is COVID. Again, Joe Biden says we've now got control of COVID. As long as we have the vaccine and the second vaccine and the booster vaccine, everything is going to be fine. But it's not. Why? Because he didn't take into account the many mutations that are taking place. And of course, those Americans who say that it's not true, it's a fake, it's poisonous, the vaccine and all the other rubbish that we've heard of along the way. So the hospitals, in some cases, are being inundated with patients and their death rate is rising. And you've got a problem economically because some Americans don't know whether they're working in the office one week or working back at home another week. And this is affecting generally the economy. And Joe Biden should never have said that we have victory over COVID. That's number two. Number three, Afghanistan. We've spoken about it several times before. Not blaming the Americans for pulling out of Afghanistan after 20 years. Barack Obama said he was going to do that. Donald Trump actually engaged in talks to do that. It was the way that Joe Biden did it, pulling out, leaving those Afghans who had put their lives on the line, working for the American embassy, working as translators for the soldiers. Some of them got left behind. Some of them have now been killed by the Taliban. And when Boris Johnson, his greatest ally, the British greatest ally, decided to make a call and ask Joe Biden what was taking place, he didn't get the call back until almost 36 hours later, which is not the way that
he also left
treat.
all the equipment there as well, didn't he? All that money, those Black Hawk helicopters, the guns, the munitions, everything else. I mean, it was just an absolute embarrassment.
He's also got problems on the southern border. Why? Because, again, thousands and thousands of migrants crossing from South America and from Mexico, Central America, into America. Some of them are getting in over the fence illegally. Some of them are going into these detention centres. And as a result, the facilities in the detention centres are atrocious. There are gangs inside of there. Young women and children are being threatened. There is reports of stabbings as well, not being highlighted so much in some of the American media, but it doesn't look very good on Joe Biden. And finally, that's four so far, education. Critical race theory.
Oh, my goodness.
We've never heard of those three words this time last year.
That's right.
Brand new words. What's going on? Basically, inside of schools, it's teaching Americans, American students, American school kids to hate America. There was a case, and I have to admit, I picked this up from the BBC of all places, of an American school that had black kids and white kids in there, and they decided to split up the black kids and the white kids and play role. So the black kids were being suppressed, and the white kids were the oppressors. In other words, the black kids were to be told they were slaves. The parents got to hear about this. As you can imagine, both the black parents and the white parents complained about this to the school. This is a typical example of what critical race theory is. So the question is, can Joe Biden turn it around? And we don't know, but Reagan, his popularity was down in the midterms, so was Clinton and so was Obama, and they managed to turn it back. Can Bill Clinton do it? I don't think he can, but we'll have to see.
Well, we'll see. Listen, thank you so much, James. Very interesting. Critical race theory, of course, some people do support it. So, but thank you so much, James. That's James Marler, our foreign affairs expert. Right, you're watching me, Nana Akua, on GB News. There's more to come in the next hour. So if you just joined me, we're fast approaching 5 o'clock. And for this hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. The show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me, it's former Liberal Democrat MP Embed Opik and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity or a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We'll talk the highs, the lows and the lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today I'll be joined by Trent Franks, a former Republican politician during the Trump administration, so that would be very interesting. I'll ask him what life was like working under the former president. Then coming up, our great British debate. The government has announced the killing of Arthur Lavinjo Hughes will be the subject of a national review to protect other children from such evil crimes. The 6-year-old was tortured, killed by his father and stepmother after social workers found no safeguarding concerns. So today I'm asking, are childcare services fit for purpose? Email us gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at GBNews. But first, let's get your latest headlines.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey and this is your news at 5 o'clock. Officials have confirmed a further 86 cases of the Omicron variant in the UK, taking the total to 246. It comes after the travel industry reacted with fury to rule changes, meaning all passengers arriving into the UK will need to take a COVID pre-departure test from Tuesday. The decision was made after data showed an increase in the number of Omicron cases linked to foreign travel. Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab says the travel measures are key to helping keep the Omicron variant at bay.
I know that that's a burden for the travel industry, but we've made huge strides in this country. We've got 80% of those over 12 double jab now. We've got a third of the country with a third jab or a booster. We've got to take the measures targeted forensically to stop the new variant seeding in this country to create a bigger problem.
Meanwhile, the first at-home COVID-19 treatment could be offered to patients by Christmas in an attempt to protect the vulnerable from the new variant. Health Secretary Sajid Javid is set to launch a national pilot of the antiviral pill called Lagevrio, after the UK became the first country in the world to licence its use. The NHS would be expected to deliver courses of the tablets within as little as 48 hours of a positive coronavirus result. Professor Lawrence Young, Vice President of the Medical School at the University of Warwick, says this speed of delivery is the biggest concern.
This is the issue. It's about how do you organise this? And so the idea here is people that report symptoms that are on the more vulnerable side of things and have comorbidities will be provided with the drug very quickly, and that's got to happen. And that's the bit that I think I'm a little bit concerned about, the logistics, getting that drug to people within that time frame.
The Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng has said it is totally unacceptable that thousands of homes are still without power 9 days after Storm Arwen hit the UK. Just over 3,000 properties across northern England and Scotland still have no supply, despite nearly 300 military personnel being drafted in to assist. Yellow weather warnings have been issued in the area ahead of Storm Barra, which is expected to arrive on Tuesday. More than 50 houses have been evacuated in Derby after a number of suspicious items were found. Officers attended a house on King Alfred Street in Normanton earlier this morning, around 11:30. The explosive ordnance disposal team are on site and police have asked residents to stay away. A man has been arrested and remains in custody. People have paid their respects to Arthur Labinjo Hughes in Solihull today. Crowds, including the 6-year-old's grandmother, released balloons at the vigil. Earlier, the government announced a national review into the circumstances leading to his death. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was jailed for life after being found guilty of his murder, while his father, Thomas Hughes, received 21 years for manslaughter. The Attorney General's office says the length of the sentences is to be reviewed. The Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, has said it would have been a breach of COVID restrictions if a party was held in number 10 Downing Street in the run-up to last Christmas. It comes after the Metropolitan Police said they were considering complaints made by Labour Party backbenchers about the alleged gatherings. Boris Johnson hasn't denied the event took place, but says no rules were broken. Illegal drug users could have their passports taken away as part of the Prime Minister's new 10-year plan to tackle drug-related crime. Expected to be announced this week, the plans include removing offenders' driving licences and football-style travel bans. Tougher measures will also be put in place to break up county lines gangs. Meanwhile, 50 local authorities with the worst drug issues, including Middlesbrough, Blackpool and Liverpool, will receive increased funding. At least 14 people have died and 56 are injured after Mount Semeru erupted yesterday in Indonesia. At least 1,300 people have been evacuated after several villages were blanketed with falling ash, mud and debris. Indonesia's weather agency says the expected rain could complicate evacuations even more. The country's National Disaster Agency says rescuers are still searching for those reported missing. Well, that's it from me for now. I'll bring you the latest headlines in around a half an hour's time. Until then, it's back to Nana Akua.
Now, each week I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. And today I'm joined by Trent Franks. Now, he's a former Republican politician during the Trump administration. Before I speak to him, let's take a very quick look at that exclusive interview with the former US president on GB News this week. Nigel Farage had a very direct question on the future of Donald Trump and politics.
Why would a man who's got all the things you've got, great family, wonderful life, why on earth would he consider going back into that hell again?
If you love the country, you have no choice. It's not a question. It's just, this is a wonderful, beautiful life. But I like that too because I was helping people. That's why I did it. And I think you'll be happy in the future too.
So let's find out more about what it was like working in the government when Donald Trump was in the White House. I'm joined today by former Republican politician during the Trump administration, Trent Franks. Trent, thank you so much for joining me. Now, firstly...
Well, it's just an honor to be with you, Nana. I have to say to you, first off, that I'm so grateful that there are networks like the GB network there in the UK, because so oftentimes, you know, in America, we feel like our reality gets distorted pretty significantly by our own media, and then it's recalibrated even further sometimes in the left-wing media of other nations. And you just have to know that I am very grateful for such an opportunity, and I'm so proud of all of you, and I hope you just keep growing and keep doing great things. It's important to the world.
Well, thank you so much, Trent, and we will do our utmost to keep the media balanced. Now, I want to ask you then, firstly, was Donald Trump a good president? Because initially you weren't sort of 100% behind him, but then you sort of grew to work with him, and you seemed a lot happier working with him.
Well, it is true that in the primary, I supported a gentleman by the name of Mike Huckabee, who is a very wonderful friend of mine, and I think he's a great statesman and would have been a wonderful president. And I grew to support Donald Trump after we actually became connected to each other and actually got to know the man. Because oftentimes, you know, our media here judged or tried to diminish Donald Trump based on his tweets. But we began to recognize here something more was there, that he was someone that had policies that would really work for the country, and that our opponents in the world took him seriously, even if the left-wing media did not. So I just have to tell you, I have grown to be a very strong supporter of Donald Trump. I don't suggest to you that he is always someone that's able to speak diplomat very well, but in truth, this man, as he said on the interview, does love America. And his greatest sin among the left was he was willing to stand up and fight those who didn't have the same perspective about America and to call it for what it was. And they were just not used to someone having that kind of courage and directness. And I just have to say to you, when you compare Donald Trump with Joe Biden, America is having a lot of second thoughts about electing a Joe Biden. And I think that portends well for the next election.
Of course, Trump couldn't say whether he's going to go for that election, but I suspect he might. Now, for you, though, I mean, why did you decide to get into politics in the first place?
Well, that's kind of a pretty direct question, Nana, and I will just tell you it's a timely one. I became involved because most of my life has been involved in children's issues and trying to protect children, and I know everybody loves children, but some of us feel a special calling to that end. And I began to consider the fact that in America, with Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton, when they were handed down together, and a lot of people don't realize this, that it really created a construct for abortion on demand up until birth. And that's been something America has struggled with greatly. And as you know, we just saw the Supreme Court here in the United States hold oral arguments on the case called Dobbs from Mississippi. And it really is making us all take a second look. And if you want to look at one of the most stark differences between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, look no further than that issue. Donald Trump struggled, as a lot of us did, with that issue. But he came to the conclusion that there was a little human being involved here, and he came to the conclusion that it was right to try to protect them and that we did not liberate mothers by helping them take the lives of their children. And Joe Biden, on the other hand, once said, you know, he was against funding of abortion, against a lot of these things, and he has gone completely the other way. And I believe he has betrayed millions of the most innocent of all human beings, which is the antithesis of leadership. And you look at the Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump has placed on the court, and it looks like that could make a vital difference here. And the left is not concerned that Donald Trump's justices are going to somehow distort the U.S. Constitution. They're concerned that they're going to read it and apply it as written. And I just have to say to you that I think that may be one of Donald Trump's great legacies, is that like your William Wilberforce in England, who saw the humanity in the slaves and worked to try to protect them. I believe that Donald Trump's efforts, along with many others here, will see the tragedy of abortion on demand put behind us and come up with a better way than what we've had for so long.
Of course, abortion, as ever, should be the person's choice ultimately, as to, and...
Well, if the child gets a choice, I'd be all for it.
Yeah. Well, and I hear you, but I mean, others would say that actually, it is down to the mothers and those who are carrying the child. But I mean, that's an outside question. What I want to know, though... No,
it's a central question in the debate in America right now. It's a central one.
Yeah, of course. It's a big question in America. In this country, it's a slightly different... we have the choice as to whether we have the abortion or not. Now, I want to bring you on to your sort of life, though, specifically, and your time in Congress. Because I'm wondering, what is it like in Congress? What was your biggest achievement, would you say?
Well, I have to say, I served 15 years in the United States Congress, and it's one of the most meaningful times of my entire life, and I will always be grateful for the time that I spent there. I focused a lot on children's issues, on adoption, on protecting children across the world and trying to help them find places where they could have a permanent family, to try to do things to protect the family here in America so that they would be able to be raised in an environment that would give them the best chance to lay hold on the miracle of life. And those were primary focuses for me. I was co-chair of the pro-life caucus. I was involved in the adoption caucus. And also, I did a lot of things related to national security and national defense. In fact, I'm good friends with your Lord James Arbuthnot, who's your former defense minister there. He's a great man there in England. And so most of the time, it was to try to protect the innocent and to protect America's national security. Those are the primary focuses that I had.
Now, of course, you
and still do.
Now, you left the White House in 2017. How do you feel that US politics sort of differs from what you see here in the UK? Because we've had so much going on, of course. We've had Brexit, we've had all these things. We've got, obviously, you've got your issues with immigration across the border, illegal immigration. We've got that as well. But in terms of the differences, what do you see?
Well, it's come a complete 180. I mean, now the main focus in America is on this whole woke environment and canceling people because they have different views than our own. True tolerance is not in always agreeing with each other. It's being decent to each other in spite of our disagreements. And today, I mean, our left-wing media today would have the world believe that because the sun comes up in the East in America, that's proof of institutional racism, that we're a racist nation because of that. And that seems to be almost the entire focus of the left, to where instead of doing the things, that Trump's presidency was an aspirational presidency. It sought to bring us together on the foundations that made America what we are, that we're someone that believes that we're created by God and that we have the right to live and be free and pursue our dreams and to have property and to have a free market. And these are things that we're aspired to. But unfortunately, just in a few short months in a year, the highest echelons of our leadership, the White House now, has gone where they're destructive of those ends. And that's a great concern. And when I spoke of the next election, I really wasn't even talking about the presidential election. I was talking about the midterms in Congress. I think the American people have gotten a clear look at what this woke, left-wing, socialist idiocy is all about. And I think that they're going to make some significant changes in the next election.
Do you feel the tide is turning now and people are seeing it for the way you see it now?
I really do. I think America has had a chance to look at both sides. And I will tell you that the media here in our country, many of the left-wing media has really taken a terrible beating. They've shown themselves to be corrupt and shown themselves to be inaccurate. And again, that's why I just am convinced that there's still hope. And yet at the same time, there are things that are taking place now that are very serious for the future. I mean, Russia, China, Iran, all of those countries are now on the march moving forward. And I think it reflects a weak presidency in America. And I'm very concerned about what that means to the geopolitical reality of the whole world. I mean, it's a significant challenge that we face.
But of course, Trump's idea was that America first, so he wouldn't have wanted to get involved in a lot of this, you know, a lot of wars or anything else with other countries in any case. But one thing you did notice with Trump...
Well, America he did try to fight for the American foundational principles first, but remember that America is first and foremost an idea, that we're a committed nation that really, it's not that American people have any special wisdom. We just have a foundational premise that we believe that the right of every human being, of every child of God, is to live and to be free, to own property, and to pursue their dreams. And that's something that America wants for the whole world. And Donald Trump is first and foremost committed to that. And he believes that the best way he can accomplish that is to preserve the flagship of freedom in the world.
So if Trump runs for re-election, would you support him?
Well, I can say yes, I would if he runs for re-election. I don't know that he's going to do that. I'm not going to try to inject myself in the future politics right now. But I will say, you know, I know a lot of very capable people that are considering possibly running, possibly Mike Pence, possibly Ron DeSantis, possibly Mike Pompeo. There's some wonderful human beings out there that could be a great president. But if Donald Trump runs, he will probably win the primary, hands down. And then, of course, it will be vital that we don't let the left continue to take America down this dark socialist nightmare that they seem to be so intent on taking us.
Well, listen, Trent, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. For you now, what are your plans now?
Well, I continue to work on different cases related to the Supreme Court. And, you know, I'm with my 13-year-old twins who are the light of my soul. And I have everything that a man could ask for to be thankful for. And again, one of the things I'm thankful for is that GB is out there helping America be known to the world in a better way and to help the truth have a chance to be heard, whether it's in the UK or I hope someday across Europe and across the world.
Well, listen, Trent, next time you're in the UK, make sure you come down to GB News. I'll definitely love to meet you. All right, Trent, thank you. Thank you so much. That's Trent Franks. He's a former United States representative. So that's, of course, outside. Coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. The government has announced the killing of Arthur Labinjo Hughes will be the subject of a national review to protect other children from such evil crimes. The 6-year-old was tortured and killed by his father and stepmother after social workers found no safeguarding concerns. So today, I'm asking, are childcare services fit for purpose? First, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with clear spells for many as showers ease in the east. Let's take a look at the details. In southwest England, there will be plenty of bright spells to end the day with just the odd shower for the far west. Under clear skies this evening, temperatures will drop before rising through the night. Across London, a fairly cloudy end to the day, although showers will start to ease. Under any clear spells this evening, temperatures could temporarily drop to freezing. Over in Wales, some bright spells into the night, though temperatures will drop before rising later as cloud and rain moves in. A dry end to the day with light wind in the Midlands with clear skies this evening, and we'll see temperatures dropping, but these will pick up through the night. Moving to the northeast of England, light showers will continue across eastern coasts, although they will be easing. A local frost may develop as temperatures continue to drop close to or below freezing. A dry end to the day across southern Scotland with some bright spells, clearer skies this evening, and a frost may develop for some, particularly over higher ground. In Northern Ireland, after a fine day, temperatures will drop for a time this evening, allowing again a local frost to form for some. Cloud cover increases from the west later on. A band of cloud and rain moves eastwards overnight, bringing rain to many western parts parts by the morning, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So if you've just tuned in, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. Now, the killing of Arthur Labinjo Hughes will be the subject of a national review to protect other children from such evil crimes. Now, the 6-year-old was tortured and killed by his father and stepmother after social workers found no safeguarding concerns. The Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, says that the government won't rest until we have the answers we need. So this afternoon, I'm asking, are our childcare services fit for purpose? I'm joined by independent child protection and safeguarding consultant Ken Palmer. Now, Ken, I want to start by talking about the systems in place, both locally and nationally, to safeguard children. So talk me through how these systems operate, how people make complaints and how they're handled.
OK, good afternoon, Anna. Firstly, can I just start by kind of offering my thoughts and condolences to Arthur's extended family member, and I welcome the review and that we can take a good, hard, long look at this to kind of find out what went wrong. So the processes would be normally that someone somewhere would have a concern, either a concern would be raised within a school setting, so something may be spotted in a school. It could be an NSPCC referral, it could be a member of the public, various ways that it could come in. Normally, I have to say from my experience, it's normally through schools. Where do children spend most of their waking hours? In schools? Schools are particularly well placed to observe and notice when things are going wrong. So quite a lot of referrals would come from school settings generally.
Well, you see, the thing is, though, with this system, and I know of people, and this is, people that I know who've had vindictive so in situations where people have split up from partners and things like that, where people have made just bogus sort of, vindictive claims. How do they work out which ones are real and which ones aren't? Because that is an issue.
It is an issue. I have to say again, in my experience, that was rare. Normally, if a concern had been raised, there was something in it, but it does happen. I accept that. But I think you've got to look at each individual case by case. And you've got to, okay, so it could be malicious, but what do we know about this family? Let's do some checks. Has this family been known to children's services or social services or the police or the other organisations before? Let's follow our checks. Let's see where they take us. What do we know? Speak to the child. Speak to the family. If it is, funny enough, I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day, and they had to take their child to hospital some years ago now with a head injury, and they were quizzed about how the injury happened. And that's only right that staff in hospitals do ask those questions. But is this consistent with what's being said? Is the injury consistent with what's being said? Has the child presented at hospital before? As I've said, there's a range of checks that you can do.
So this range of checks, though, because and I'm glad you've pointed them out. I don't quite understand, looking at this particular case, how so many things were missed. Because, as you said, they'll go to the schools. The schools, apparently, in this particular case, had been informed and had informed services. And I'm just wondering why is it that, looking at this case, why most people are absolutely aghast at it, not only for the awful abuse this poor child went through, but for the fact that all these so-called agencies that were there to protect didn't appear to do their jobs.
Again, I mean, can I just say that this is incredibly challenging work? I've done it. I worked in I was a police officer within the child abuse investigation team, and then I went and worked for children's services. This is incredibly challenging work. You're dealing with risk. You're dealing with uncertainty. You're dealing with unknowns. And there's a lot of good work that is done every day, and we don't hear about those things. But this has gone wrong. Yes, I accept something has clearly gone wrong. Lockdown didn't help. The child was not seen. Again, I don't know. All I know is what you know from the media and what's been reported in the newspapers. I don't know the detail yet, and I kind of look forward to seeing the detail. And there will no doubt be opportunities that were missed. But yeah. Do we? I thought back to a case that I dealt with of child cruelty. My time in the police service. And what I did was and this all comes with experience as well. And you have that nagging doubt, a gut feeling, as sometimes people call it. But let's check with neighbours. Let's do some local inquiries. Let's knock on doors. And as a result of doing that, one of my last cases before I retired from the police service was a child cruelty case where I had a neighbour that came to court to provide evidence for me. She was able to see the day-to-day of that child. She was able to tell me that my children were out in the garden playing, and I could see that the children next door just looking out of the window. There was a parent from the school as well who was also willing to provide a statement for me and come to court and provide evidence. I had teachers from the school. So I think it's this a bit of a journalistic approach, if you like, thinking the unthinkable. What's gone on here? What are they not saying?
So how do these organisations, I just want to ask you, so how do these organisations join the dots? So you said about the schools, and then there's the parents, and then there's other observers and neighbours. How do they join the dots? Because I'm just wondering that maybe that's where the link seems to be quite weak. So even people who go to the police, there doesn't seem to be any sort of connection. Is there a cross multi-agency approach, or how does that work?
There is, and we talk very much about child protection, safeguarding is a multi-agency business, and we talk that, and that's the mantra. But when I stand up in front of professionals sometimes, and I now deliver training, I say to them, I will tell you how it should work. But I do think sometimes within organisations, it doesn't always work. We talk the talk, but we don't always walk the walk. So, yes, things could get better. And I think as well, sometimes there is and I picked it up I work a lot now with schools. I support schools with safeguarding. And I certainly would like to see more trust in schools. There tends to be a bit of a hierarchy within some of these organisations that social workers maybe think know a little bit more than schools do. Police officers will obviously have their own agenda. They're the investigation side of things. And I just think we need to listen to each other more. We need to, and certainly schools. As I've said, where do children spend most of their waking hours? In schools. I think it is schools that know the children. Certainly in primary schools, Arthur was age 6. They will know. They will know the family. They will know the community. So I would like to see maybe social workers aligned with schools or social workers in schools. I think it could be more joined up. Is my having kind of left both services now. It could be better. And I think there is huge workloads. Again, we have to look at that. We have to recognise that. Social workers, I think there's too much bureaucracy. What is the culture of the organisation? Is there pressure on them to finish assessments, finish reports for court? Managers putting pressure on them to close cases. And I know this because I've worked inside. I'm not a social worker, but I've worked with social work colleagues. But I know that happens. So, I think we kind of have to get back to allowing social workers and practitioners to do what they should be doing. Get out there and start visiting families and seeing families and supporting families.
And actually getting on the ground and seeing what is actually going on. Listen, Ken, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Ken Palmer. He's an independent child protection and safeguarding consultant. Well, after the break, we'll continue our great British debate. I'm asking, are our childcare services fit for purpose? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. I'm Simon Pusey. Here are your latest headlines. Officials have announced a further 86 cases of the Omicron variant, taking the UK total to 246. It's after the travel industry reacted with fury to rule changes, meaning all passengers arriving to the UK will need to take a COVID pre-departure test from Tuesday. The decision was made after data showed an increase in the number of Omicron cases linked to foreign travel. The first at-home COVID-19 treatment could be offered by to patients by Christmas in an attempt to protect the vulnerable from the Omicron variant. Health Secretary Sajid Javid is set to launch a national pilot of the antiviral pill called Lag-Evrio after the UK became the first country in the world to licence its use. People have paid their respects to Arthur Labinjo Hughes in Solihull today. Crowds, including Arthur's grandmother, released balloons and left tributes at the vigil outside the 6-year-old's home. This follows the government's announcement of a national review into the circumstances leading to his death. Illegal drug users could have their passports taken away as part of the Prime Minister's new 10-year plan to tackle drug-related crime. Expected to be announced this week, the plans include removing offenders' driving licences and football-style travel bans. Tougher measures will also be put in place to break up county lines gangs. Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng has said it's totally unacceptable that thousands of homes are still without power 9 days after Storm Arwen hit the UK. Just over 3,000 properties across northern England and Scotland still have no supply, despite nearly 300 military personnel being drafted in to assist. Yellow weather warnings have been issued in the area ahead of Storm Barra, which is expected to arrive on Tuesday. That's it from me. Now let's get back to the Great British Debate.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So, good afternoon. If you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. So we're discussing with regard to, of course, that awful case, as we know, of this awful abuse that this poor child went through, and then, of course, unfortunately, was killed by his stepmother and his father. So we're going to get back to our debate this hour. The government has announced that the killing of Arthur Nabinjo Hughes will be the subject of a national review to protect other children from such evil crimes. The 6-year-old was tortured and killed by his father and stepmother after social workers found no safeguarding concerns. That's what that's quoted. So today I'm asking, are childcare services fit for purpose? So let's see what my panel think. Lembit and Danny. I'm going to start with you, Danny.
The question, are they fit for purpose? Well, in this case, obviously, the answer is unfortunately and tragically no. We have to caveat that with the fact that these two, and let's call them animals, they were as cunning as foxes and they manipulated the system. But was it fit for purpose? No, because a 6-year-old lad was murdered. There are chilling echoes of, and I'm going to take you up to the northwest of England, the Liverpool Echo, front page headline, Did Darren have to die? Darren Clarke was 3 years old when he was brutally murdered by his stepfather, and there were things that went on that even after midnight you can't talk about. It's just, honestly, stomach churning. It's disgusting. And Darren, poor little Darren, his stepfather shook him to death after a period of cruelty, and Darren's aunties went to the police and went to the social services, and they were basically ignored. Now, because of the trial, after the trial, the Liverpool Echo and the tenacity of the journalists, including my father, who won 1978 Campaigning Reporter of the Year for this, they exposed the inadequacies and the weaknesses in the social services and the police talking to each other. And that led to a parliamentary inquiry. Now, let's fast forward 42 years, because that was 1978. There's going to be another parliamentary inquiry into the failures of the police and the social services, and the chilling echo of this crime was that the grandmother, poor little Arthur's grandmother, went to the social services, just like poor little Darren's aunties went to the social services.
I think the uncle went as well, so it wasn't just the grandmother. Others went as well to the police, and nothing appeared to. There's no joined-up thinking.
We were talking during the break. There's no words to describe how any parent will feel, any proper, adjusted parent will feel when they see the story. So I won't go down that path. And also, I couldn't work in that sector. You must end up emotionally totally exhausted if you're trying to protect children who are vulnerable. How bad is the system? I don't think it is that bad. I think that these are isolated cases with revolting, horrible consequences for the victims when it does go wrong. But if you look at it in the round, 200 years ago, there just wasn't any protection. 150 years ago, you could get away with murdering someone in your family, as long as you were smart, and you get away with it. So if you look at it in the long term, we actually have quite a lot of protection in there. No system's going to be completely robust. So Danny says a really interesting point, and from your biographical experience from all those decades ago, maybe something did come from that inquiry, which has saved lives. Maybe the same will happen here. No one's going to bring Arthur back, but I do think that the system it's not totally broken. I think it's almost unfair on the people who do this incredibly difficult job. To simply say that the system is not fit for purpose.
Yeah, but I mean, you can go on and talk about individuals, and all individuals who work in this industry I'm sure the majority are very, very well-meaning. But that doesn't really help when the systems are not designed to talk to each other. And as Danny pointed out, something that happened, 40 years ago or so, we're repeating the same thing. I mean, Victoria, Columbia, another one, the same thing again. The same thing, the agencies not speaking to each other. In the end, it results in somebody dying or things going badly wrong. And you say, well, these cases are few. And it's like, well, actually, probably the amount, this kind of abuse is is quite rare. So that is rare. And that's why they're there. They're there to find these rare cases. That's the job. Yeah. And it wasn't as if they hadn't been sort of told that something was going wrong.
I want to be cautious because I am not qualified in this subject, and therefore what you say might be right. And I don't know enough about the sector and this really tough work to really say who is right on this one. And that's a really big caveat. All I feel I can safely say is maybe more a hope than anything else. It doesn't have to happen often. And if it takes, and it's a conditional comment, if it takes more joined up thinking between those services, then so be it. There is also a slight danger of going too far the other way, in which situation
we have to be careful.
Innocent parents are accused. And we've seen that too.
We've seen that, yes.
And that's what makes this so difficult, because people far more experienced than me, and Danny probably has better experience because of his father's research. We need to recognise there has to be proportionality, because it's just as bad to punish kids by taking them away from safe parents, perhaps because of some misunderstandings, as it is to let these people torture their children.
Well, as you say as well, because I know, as a parent, you would be worried, I suppose, and I hear that a lot of parents are worried that if you do call the agencies or the social services, that your child will be taken away from you for something that really isn't anything. So there is that fear. And I know social services and childcare services there is that allure around them that makes people worry. But the other thing, I was wondering, because when I was reading the paper, and obviously this is such a horrendous case, I could barely read it, to be honest. But I was reading the paper this morning and waiting for the phrase, lessons will be learned. And I found learned lessons. It's the other way around. But here we are. I mean, we end up in this cycle of signalling that something will be learned. But yet, 40 years on, we're still doing exactly the same thing.
That's correct. 40 years on, 42 years on. It's almost, again, just to sort of spin it round, we could almost ask the question, let's just say some radical Islamist blew himself up on the tube. We could almost ask the same question, are the security services fit for purpose? Because you're dealing with individuals who are so manipulative, and I hate to use this word here, but intelligent in their manner of covering their tracks, then you could actually ask the same question about multiple agencies, couldn't you? I think we need to look at the individuals. This woman was so manipulative, and she was the as cunning as a fox with how she covered her tracks.
But there were significant. I mean, and as I've read, from what I've read, and of course this is only what is out there, that the police had been contacted, schools had made complaints. So if it were a case that nobody knew about this and there's been no, this was just sort of come out of the blue, then I could agree with that. But when we are looking at something, again, it's happening where agencies have been informed. Those who are supposed to be there to protect have been informed. And as in that report, it said there's no concerns at all. That's when we need to be worrying. Yeah, that's why I'm concerned.
Something all three of us agree, and I imagine most viewers agree, something's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
The question for me is a simple one with a difficult answer. Is it practical to have identified this earlier? The inference is yes, based on what your expert said and what Danny said and what you said. But the question for me is, are we kind of rewriting it now, looking back with the benefit of hindsight? No one goes into social services, in my view, or child protection to get rich. They're doing it because it's a vocation. So I don't think that this will have been deliberately ignored.
No, but nobody thinks that this is deliberate. Nobody's suggesting for 1 minute that the people there are not good, wonderful, vocational, empathetic, kind people. But what we have to do is look at the system and go, how come we keep repeating the exact same mistake? Because that's the thing, isn't it? Only a fool repeats the same mistake time and time again.
It was interesting, your guest before the news headlines was saying that, and he was speculating, but he suggested that there could be pressure internally to actually close cases. There may be a manpower issue, there may be a shortage of whatever, resources. And I hope that will come out. And to see how Solihull Council, how well prepared, and if there was any issues with staffing or maybe budgetary concerns or maybe manpower, or whether there was a boss saying, right, just close this case, close that case, because I've got targets to hit. I don't know. This is hypothesis and speculation, just picking up off the back of the guest, because he's the guy, your guest has spent 20-odd years doing this.
Yeah.
And so these suggestions came from a position of experience.
But one thing he did say, though, he did talk about the multi-agency and the lack of communication and the lack of joined-up thinking.
It could be that. I would say one other thing. Maybe it's a bit controversial. I would prefer us to have an inquiry rather than an inquisition. Let's find out what went wrong rather than finding a finger of blame to point.
Well, let's hope we actually do something about it this time and change the approach in some way and join up the dots when these issues are brought to light. Now, you've heard what my guests and panel think. Now it's time for your say. And Keith says lessons will be learnt. They say this every time. Exactly. That's the first, literally, Keith, seriously, literally the fifth line of what I was reading, it said that. Every time something like this happens, and then it happens again. Bill says social services haven't been fit for purpose for many years. Sarah says they've had cuts after cuts, not enough social workers. And to add to that, who in their right mind would want to get into debt doing the training only to have the finger pointed at them every time something awful like this happens? The whole system has failed. Interesting that she's pointed out the training, isn't it? That costs money, and it costs a lot of money. So that's quite interesting, because that's an observation that perhaps none of us would have looked at. Julie says, not just services for children, it's adult social services too. Yeah, well, obviously we'll all be following this case and hope that something is done to protect children who face abuse like this. Right, so now it's time to move on to my bookmark. And this week, an insider's account of the battle for Brexit in Parliament. Conservative MP Mark Francois, a leading Brexiteer, is documenting the decision that changed the UK in his own words. And I'm pleased to say the MP for Rayleigh and Wickford, Mark Francois, joins me now. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
Now, you've written a book. Why did you decide to do this, and this particular book as well?
Well, there's a story that needs to be told about what really happened in Parliament and in the media after the 2016 referendum, when the people of this country voted peacefully and democratically to leave the European Union, and then the British establishment in its various guises, including a number of MPs in Parliament, did everything they practically could to overturn the democratic decision of the British people. And this book is about that story, and ultimately about how 28 Conservative MPs utterly refused to allow that to succeed and stopped it from happening.
I presume this book has got elements of comedy in it, then, if that's what you're saying, because it was...
Well, it does. It's written on a serious subject, but with an eye to humour too. So, for instance, one of the guests you just had on your show is in it. Lembit Opik was a friend of mine when he was in Parliament. We were at Bristol University together. I was the chairman of... There he is! I was the chairman of the University Conservatives. He was the president of the Student Union. He was chairman of a particular society, the name of which I can't read out on your programme, but he'll remember what it was. He'll tell you afterwards in the green room. And if Lembit will forgive me, there's an anecdote in there about when I turned down a double date with one of the cheeky girls. Right, Lembit?
It's true. You're guilty as charged.
There we are, mate. So, so there's some light-hearted humour in there as well. But the key point about the book is this was the biggest thing in British politics since the end of the Second World War. I think all sides of the debate would agree on that. And it's called The Inside Story because, if you like, it takes the reader into Parliament. It explains some of the procedures that were at work, and it explains ultimately why the so-called withdrawal agreement, which, remember, was a draft treaty, this is what all the arguments were about, actually didn't take us out of the EU at all. It was very cleverly drafted to have precisely the opposite effect. And I and my colleagues in the ERG realised that when we'd read it. Many MPs, unfortunately, never read it at all. And we fought tenaciously to stop that going through, because if it had have gone through, for reasons I explain in the book in layman's English, I sort of try to decode all of these treaties and documents so the reader can follow it very clearly. If that had gone through, then we would have been trapped in the European Union forever. And the book explains why that is the case.
I think we were all suspicious of that one as well. Now, you were a big critic, actually, of Theresa May's leadership and her handling and implementing of Brexit, and obviously that particular part of the handling of it. In your view, what would you say were her biggest mistakes?
Well, she originally, when she became Prime Minister, she gave a speech at Lancaster House, where she set out, if you like, a vision for a clean break from the EU. And that had a lot of support, including in Parliament. But at Chequers, if you remember that, there was this big meeting of the Cabinet at Chequers, where she did a complete volte-face and produced a white paper that basically meant we would probably go into a customs union. And because we were in a customs union, we couldn't control our economic relations with other countries. We could only continue to do that through the EU. So we wouldn't actually have left the European Union at all. And throughout the battle for Brexit, that was at the heart of the argument. As I say in the book, we spent 6 months, I and my colleagues in the European Research Group, desperately trying to persuade Theresa May and her advisors to change their mind, to abandon Chequers and to go back, if you like, to the original Lancaster House vision. So, if you like, we tried jaw before war. And it's only when it became startlingly apparent that she was not going to change her mind, partly based on the advice from her advisors, that we decided we could either roll over and allow our country to be trapped in the EU forever, or we could fight it. So we resolved to fight it. And for that, we formed a very secret, if you like, whipping team, who we called the Buddies. And the Buddies has there are 2 members of the current cabinet now that were in that whipping team 2 years ago.
Yeah, interesting. The book sounds like a must-read. But then, if we take the comment of Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said that if you voted for Brexit, you really ought to buy this book. So is there anything in there for the Remainers or Remoaners?
Well, there's something in it for everybody in the run-up to Christmas. Because, you know, I'm sure even Remainers, I'll be polite here, even Remainers, you know, who were looking in outside must have become fascinated by these endless arguments night after night. The Malthouse Compromise, the Brady Amendment, the Cooper Bowles-Letwin Bill, all of these things which, looking in from the outside, must have looked as if, you know, MPs had lost their minds at times. What the book does, whether you're a Brexiteer or a Remainer, is it explains in simple everyday English what these things were and why they actually mattered in terms of what was literally the destiny of our country. If you're a die-hard Remainer, you're probably not going to enjoy this book as much as if you're an ardent Brexiteer. But nonetheless, however you voted, it would explain what was going on. And one of the things I point out in the book, is if you recall, in the run-up to the referendum, the government spent £9 billion of taxpayers' money on a booklet that went through every single door in the UK. And that booklet said, this is a once-in-a-generation decision. And it famously said, this is your decision the government will implement what you decide. Well, at the heart of the book is the fact that the people decided to leave, but the government didn't implement it.
No,
and that's really what led to all the arguments in the House of Commons.
Well, they certainly didn't want to. Listen, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. The book sounds extremely entertaining. Very briefly, what is the book called?
It's called Spartan Victory, the inside story of the battle for Brexit. You can get it through Amazon, on the Amazon website, hardback, paperback, or Kindle, whichever version you prefer. The perfect Christmas present for your deeply Eurosceptic, Uncle Al.
We love it. Mark Francois, thank you so much. Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford. Thank you so much to my panel, Lembit and Danny. And thank you to you for watching. Enjoy. I'll see you next Friday.
Francois.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with clear spells for many as showers ease in the east. Let's take a look at the details. In southwest England, there will be plenty of bright spells to end the day with just the odd shower for the far west. Under clear skies this evening, temperatures will drop before rising through the night. Across London, a fairly cloudy end to the day, although showers will start to ease. Under any clear spells this evening, temperatures could temporarily drop to freezing. Over in Wales, some bright spells into the night, though temperatures will drop before rising later as cloud and rain moves in. A dry end to the day with light wind in the Midlands with clear skies this evening, and we'll see temperatures dropping, but these will pick up through the night. Moving to the northeast of England, light showers will continue across eastern coasts, although they will be easing. A local frost may develop as temperatures continue to drop close to or below freezing. A dry end to the day across southern Scotland with some bright spells, clearer skies this evening, and a frost may develop for some, particularly over higher ground. In Northern Ireland, after a fine day, temperatures will drop for a time this evening, allowing again a local frost to form for some. Cloud cover increases from the west later on. A band of cloud and rain moves eastwards overnight, bringing rain to many western parts by the morning, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
I'm Neil Oliver. You can join me live every Saturday evening for opinions and discussions about the week's top stories. There's also a smattering of history and archaeology and features that define our great British Isles. You'll hear my thoughts unfiltered, as well as those of my guests, and we don't always agree. And we want to hear from you too. Neil Oliver Live, Saturdays from 7 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can